Well, folks, we are in the middle of the most heated presidential contest of our lifetime. It is a dead heat. The Dems switched out their candidate, and now the Republicans are running against a different candidate with whom they are locked in what seems to be a bit of a death battle. We'll get to that in a moment. First, your reminder, we're bringing updates all the time. It's going to be a big interview tonight between Kamala Harris and CNN. Also involving Tim Walz will be pre-taped, but I will be reacting immediately tonight upon the CNN interview. But in order to be notified about that sort of stuff, you have to get 35% off your new Daily Wire Plus membership with code FIGHT at dailywire.com/subscribe. You'll get uncensored, unfiltered, ad-free shows, real-time breaking news alerts, and more. Most importantly, you'll get the truth the legacy media are covering up every single day. So here is the current status of the race. It's dead heat. That's the current status of the race. I'm looking at the Real Clear Politics polling average right now. Kamala Harris is up by about 1.5 points in the national polling. She is currently leading in Wisconsin by less than a point. Pennsylvania is a complete, total dead heat. Trump is up by 0.1 percentage points, which of course means nothing. Kamala Harris is up 1.5 points in Michigan. Trump is up 0.2 in Arizona, 0.6 in Nevada, 0.9 in North Carolina, and 0.3 in Georgia. In other words, every one of these states is within margin of error. Every single one of these states is within margin of error, which means that this race right now can turn on pretty much anything. Now, the next big event, obviously, is going to be this interview tonight. Kamala Harris is pre-taping that interview today because, of course, they were never going to allow her live in front of a camera by herself. She's got her emotional support dog, Tim Walz, there. He's like a corgi of politics. Very eager, not particularly bright. He's going to be there so that she can pet him and feel good. And then if things start to get a little out of control, like, she's asked a real question, Tim Walz can jump in and start gesticulating wildly with his hands and being a weirdo. So that'll be really exciting. She's going to need his help because here's the problem. Every time she goes off script, of course, she's a disaster area. Here, for example, she was campaigning with Tim Walz yesterday, and she went and met with a bunch of children. And Kamala Harris really has down the irritating adult who's never met a child routine. I have 4 children. I deal with kids on a regular basis. There's nothing more irritating to a child than being talked down to by an adult. And by the way, there's nothing more irritating to an adult than being talked down to by an adult. But here was Kamala Harris meeting with a bunch of children. I swear, you get her off the teleprompter, and she is like a robot that is on the fritz. She starts spazzing out. It's bizarre. It's really weird. She starts making strange hand motions. She can't string together a sentence. She starts just mouthing platitudes, the most banal platitudes you could possibly imagine. And in the background, of course, you have that emotional support corgi, Tim Walz, the dumb sitcom dad, who is nodding along enthusiastically as though she is saying something of any sort of intelligence here. Here is Kamala Harris yesterday on the campaign trail.
Our country is counting on you. All of you. You are leaders.
She's giving her fake sincere
face. By the very fact that you all are here in this room, doing what you do at
Look at the hand
incredible school, doing it as
is she casting a spell, or is she
understanding all of the different parts that fit together to create a team?
A team. That's what a team is, guys. Do you understand? Do you understand what a team is? It's a little hard to hear what she's saying there. It doesn't matter because she's not saying anything. This is her whole shtick. When she starts going with the hands, she's got nothing to say. Nothing. And this is what they're afraid of in this interview that's supposed to be broadcast tonight, obviously. Donald Trump's press secretary correctly pointed out that she has to have Tim Walz there for the interview because she is definitely afraid. And here's Carolyn Levitt saying she wants to be a powerful woman, but she needs to bring dad along. That absolutely is true, by the way. Now, Democrats, it is amazing. The Democrat media human centipede, they are trying to proclaim that this is nothing new. After all, when a presidential candidate selects a vice president, they very often do some sort of joint interview. Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney did a joint interview. Hillary Clinton, Tim Kaine, right? It's pretty normal. The difference is usually the person who has been running for president has done a few interviews before being the nominee. Kamala Harris has done 0 public interviews before being the nominee or after being the nominee, as it turns out. The reason that she's bringing along Tim Walz is to eat up the time. And because she's hoping that Dana Bash over at CNN will make the interview all about their relationship with one another and how they're really simpatico, how they're going to work together in the White House and avoid all issues. And if there is an issue, again, the corgi jumps up and starts humping Dana Bash's leg, presumably. That is how this interview, they hope, is going to work. Here's Carolyn Levitt pointing this out.
She's finally sitting down for an interview, but not by herself. She's sitting down with her running mate, Tim Walz. And I think it's quite sad that the woman trying to be the first female president of the United States needs her male running mate by her side in her first sit-down interview.
It is sad, and it is pathetic, and it is a disgrace that she has yet to answer for any of her actual policy positions, which we'll get to in a minute. But she's running strong right now. And one of the reasons she's running strong is she is spending exorbitant amounts of cash right now. I mean, blowing money. Well, folks, Kamala Harris is spending hundreds of millions of dollars to manipulate you on social media. And here's the thing. Social media is also spending hundreds of millions of dollars, like all the time, to manipulate you. And then they use your data to monetize all of that. The simple fact of the matter is that you need to deny the big tech companies your data. That's how they make money off of you. They take your data, they package it, they sell it to advertisers. And by the way, they usually have some sort of backdoor to the federal government. So why not privatize your own data? Big tech is more powerful than most countries are at this point. They profit by exploiting your personal data. It's time to put a layer of protection between your online activity and these tech juggernauts. That's why I use ExpressVPN. Think about how much of your life is on the internet. Sadly, every single site you visit, video you watch, message you send gets tracked and data mined. When you run ExpressVPN on your device, the software hides your IP address, which is the thing that big tech uses to personally identify you. So ExpressVPN makes your activity harder to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your internet data to keep you safe from hackers and eavesdroppers on your network. And ExpressVPN does all that without slowing your connection, which is why it's rated the #1 VPN service by Mashable and TechRadar. What I like most about ExpressVPN, super easy to use. Download that app on your phone or computer. Tap one button. You're now protected. Stop handing your personal data to the big tech monopoly that actually abuses you. Instead, protect yourself with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN.com/Ben to get started. That's EXPRESSVPN.com/Ben. Get 3 extra months for free. ExpressVPN.com/Ben right now to learn more. Apparently, FWIW publisher Kyle Tharp has highlighted the fact that year to date, the Biden-Harris campaigns have outspent Trump on digital $142.7 million to $25.7 million. So by a factor of about 6, a little under 6, they've outspent Trump on Facebook, Instagram, Google, and YouTube. That's why you can't watch like a Coco Melon video with your kid without seeing a Kamala Harris for president ad. Meanwhile, TikTok is absolutely jogging her. Again, that site found that 24 of the top performing TikToks last week mentioning Harris were negative. 74% were positive. As opposed to the top post mentioning Trump, 63% were negative on Trump. 36% were positive. That also has to do with the fact that the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, is definitely interested in a Kamala Harris, Tim Walz presidency. For sure. Without doubt. All this is having a real world impact. Not quite as great as the legacy media would hope, but it's having real world impact. Cook Political Report has now shifted North Carolina away from lean Republican to toss up. So North Carolina is now well within margin of error. Kamala Harris is trying to make a play to put Georgia back in play. She's out doing campaigning in the rural areas of Georgia. The idea would be that if she can bring down the margin in those rural areas, then she can win Georgia. If she only loses the outlying rural areas by 10 percentage points or so, then she can win big enough in, say, the Atlanta metro that she ends up winning the state of Georgia. Again, the latest polls, according to the Washington Post, show Kamala Harris leading by 2 points in the national presidential polling average. She is also, right now, leading in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And she is within margin of error in the post-polling average in North Carolina, Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia. Very close race. Fox News has some new polling out as well. And that polling shows Kamala Harris currently leading in Arizona by 1, Georgia by 2, Nevada by 2. Trump is up only 1 in North Carolina. Okay, now, you could say that these are bad numbers for Trump. And they're not great numbers for Trump, for sure. However, again, Kamala Harris has not been asked a single question. Time to update the calendar, gang. We are now on day 40. Day 40. 0 questions, day 40 of the campaign. Insane. Totally crazy. Day 40. So we'll find out whether Dana Bash does her job tonight. Honestly, this interview is going to be more about Dana Bash than it is about Kamala Harris or Tim Walz. For those of us who watch politics, we know exactly what Kamala Harris's responses are going to be. Absolute word salad horse crap. That's what you're going to get. The question is whether Dana Bash actually tries to do her job. And it's a bit of a rock and a hard place for Dana Bash. If she does her job and asks hard questions and pushes a little bit on Kamala Harris, if Tim Walz jumps in and she says to Tim Walz, Governor, I'd love to hear your thoughts, but I'm really here to talk to the presidential candidate. You are the vice presidential candidate, and you have very little relevance when it comes to policy. We are told by your own campaign that the VP is not responsible for what the president does. That's Kamala Harris's entire campaign. So I want to hear from the candidate what she thinks. If she actually pushes Kamala Harris, she won't be able to go to any of the nice cocktail parties, and people at CNN will be very angry at her, and the Democratic Party will cut her off at the knees. If she does not push, she's not doing her basic job. So it'll be fascinating to see how she navigates that just on a sort of political level. But here is the thing. Again, the entire Kamala Harris campaign relies on you knowing nothing about Kamala Harris. First rule of Kamala Harris Fight Club, nobody talks about Kamala Harris. That is the first rule. You must never mention her positions. You must never mention what her crap administration has done. You must never mention any of these things. And you must certainly never attempt to get to the underlying philosophy that motivates her politics. You must never, ever attempt to do that. Because if you dig a little bit, what you find is that the Democratic Party has gone so far to the left, so radically far to the left, that they are now indistinguishable from the Democratic Socialists of America. That is the reality. Look at the great intellectual luminaries of the Democratic Party. I'm not talking about the politicians. I'm talking about the thought leaders. Among those thought leaders is one Nicole Hannah-Jones. Now, you may not have heard about Nicole Hannah-Jones recently because, after all, she hasn't done any actual work for the last 5 years. She wrote the absolutely fictitious 1619 Project back in 2020. She was given a Pulitzer for that fictitious project. It is trash, the 1619 Project. The entire thing is rooted in the idea that every element of American life is built on the foundation of slavery and thus morally corrupt evil and must be wiped away. The 1619 Project falsifies history. That's not me saying that. That is professional historians like John Wielent, Gordon Wood have pointed out all of the flawed history in the 1619 Project, for example. But this supposed genius was awarded a MacArthur Fellowship in 2017. She is the apotheosis of a Democratic intellectual. Nicole Hannah-Jones, I'll give her points for clarity. I mean, it's stupid, but at least she's being clear. There's one other area of your life where you need things to be clear. That'd be your phone line. Oh, yeah. Pure Talk will make sure that you have excellent cell phone coverage plus premium access to the media you actually care about. That's Pure Talk. Again, might be the best offer Pure Talk has ever come out with right now. When you switch your cell phone service to Pure Talk on a qualifying plan, you get a free 1-year insider subscription to Daily Wire Plus. That is correct. Take advantage of unlimited talk, unlimited text, 15 gigs of data, and mobile hotspot on America's most dependable 5G network for just $35 a month. And you get 1 year free of Daily Wire Plus. The Daily Wire Plus Insider Plan gets you access to our entire library of movies, series, and documentaries, including Lady Ballers, What is a Woman, Mr. Bertram, Foundations of the West, and more. Plus, you get all our daily shows uncensored and ad-free. The only way you can get that special offer is by going to puretalk.com/Shapiro. I'm telling you, for years, you're overpaying for your cell phone plan. If you haven't made the switch to Pure Talk, now is the time to do it. Go to puretalk.com/Shapiro today. Switch to a qualifying plan. Get 1 year free of Daily Wire Plus Insider. That's puretalk.com/Shapiro today. Well, she did a speech at the Equity Summit, according to Kimberly Bryant, who is the founder of the Black Innovation Lab and who is tweeting about the Equity Summit 2024. Here is what she said, quote, "You know what COVID taught me? That we have enough for everybody. Overnight, we printed $6 trillion. We had universal health care. We had universal basic income. COVID proved it's possible." Now, if that sounds like communism to you, that's because it is communism. And you may recall that COVID actually ended up with 40-year highs in inflation, a massively spiraling debt problem, the complete shutdown of the American economy. You might remember that because you were there. But according to Nicole Hannah-Jones, that was amazing. That is what America ought to look like. It ought to look like the government paying you to stay home, shutting down your business, and then compensating you for shutting down your business. The government ought to provide everything for free, and it will have no impact. Now, it's not a one-off. Here is what she had to say. This is back in June at the MLK Library talking about her trash 1619 project.
Do y'all remember this thing called a pandemic? Y'all remember that? Do you remember how when all of a sudden all of America was experiencing what black people experience regularly? Right? High unemployment rates, housing instability, inability to access health care. We printed $3 to $6 trillion overnight. Overnight. And all of a sudden, you couldn't evict people, right? We had universal housing. Anybody who wanted to go get that shot didn't have to show a lick of paper, $1, nothing. You showed up and you got the shot. We paid people income, universal income. My cousin Shamir, who's in the 1619 documentary in the capitalism episode, started working at 15 years old. The most she ever made was when she got laid off for COVID and got that check from the government to stay at home.
Wow.
The most she ever made. And she cried about it because she was like, I have been able to save $1,000 for the first time in my life only because all these people are dying out here. That's the first time America cared about me.
Free money. So the proposal is free money. Now, you'll recall that the reason that the government compensated people is because the government told them they could not work. The government said you cannot go to school. You cannot go into your place of work. You have to shut down your business. They shut down the entire country. And then they had to do something so that people could remain living and functional because they had literally taken away your livelihood, which is not the same thing as a high unemployment rate that results, for example, from high levels of high school dropout or high levels of single motherhood or high levels of dysfunction in the home or in the community or in the schools. Not the same thing. But this is the actual ideal. This is the thing that Democrats are shooting for. They won't say it out loud because if they ever said it out loud, people would recognize how ugly it is. The big problem with Nicole Hannah-Jones for the Democrats is that she's constantly saying the thing out loud. That's her saying. I want to know what Kamala Harris disagrees with Nicole Hannah-Jones about right there. Now, the reality is that the Biden-Harris administration has tried a lot of this. And it's true that so many Democrats were enthusiastic about all of it. I remember a few years ago, Ezra Klein, he was deeply unhappy at the inflation because he said we were doing something magical. Had a whole column about it. We were doing something magical when you blew money into the economy, modern monetary theory, that debt doesn't matter. That when you did this, you were actually creating a rising tide that was lifting all boats, but then it didn't work, and that was weird that it didn't work and upsetting that it didn't work. The reality is, of course, it doesn't work. First of all, it's immoral. Money doesn't grow on trees. It's not magically popping out of the ground just because the Federal Reserve says it is so. Money is merely a mechanism of exchange. Money does not have its own inherent value any more than inches have their own inherent value on a ruler. It is a measurement and a way of quantifying exchange. That is all money is. That's all it's ever been. But for the Democrats, for the Democratic Party, for Kamala Harris, the basic idea is the government can magically make money happen and then just give it out. And that's what makes the economy go. That is the basic theory of leftism. When it comes to economics, it's the basic Keynesian theory. When it comes to how economics should work. And the actual result is people feel left behind because it doesn't actually work this way. According to the Wall Street Journal, a July Wall Street Journal NRC poll of 1,502 U.S. adults shows a stark gap between people's wishes and their expectations. Americans overwhelmingly desire all the traditional trappings of the American dream. Owning a home, having a family, looking forward to a comfortable retirement. Very few believe that they can easily achieve it. Now, here's the question. We are now spending year on year more money than any country in the history of the planet. Any country in the history of the planet. And yet, fewer Americans feel they can achieve all of the things that the government has been promising them. The home, the family, the retirement. That's not a spending problem, folks. That is something else. That is a perversion of all the incentives that lead people to make the right decisions that allow them to build a home and a family and a retirement. 89% of respondents to this poll said owning a home is either essential or important to their vision of the future, but only 10% said home ownership is easy or somewhat easy to achieve. Well, you know whose fault that might be? I mean, it might be the fault of the Biden-Harris administration, at least in large part, because as it turns out, Harris and Biden have created the most unaffordable housing market in history, according to the latest data. Fox Business says home prices hit a new record in June amid an ongoing housing shortage, even as high mortgage rates continue to push affordability out of reach for millions of Americans. We now have effectively stagnation and stagflation with regard to the real estate market. The report adds prices increased 5.4% nationally in June when compared with the previous year, which is only down slightly from the 5.9% pace recorded the previous month. Bright MLS's chief economist told Fox the upward pressure on home prices is making this the most unaffordable housing market in history. First-time moderate income home buyers in particular increasingly are being left out of the housing market. Why? Well, I mean, part of it is because of all the restrictions the Democrats have put on building all across the country. Then it turns out that you inflate the currency, which means an increase in the interest rates, which means higher mortgage rates. And then because nobody wants to sell their home to get into a higher mortgage, there's no actual available market. So you have a lot of money floating around, which is pushing up the bidding prices on a shrinking market because nobody wants to get out of their current mortgage that is at 2.5% to get into a 7% mortgage. And that is all the policies that are being driven by the Democrats. Why do Americans feel that the housing market is unaffordable? That would be why. According to that same Wall Street Journal poll, financial security and a comfortable retirement were similarly labeled as essential or important by 96% and 95% of people, respectively, but rated as easy or somewhat easy to pull off by only 9 and 8%. I mean, why is that? We're now spending more money than we have ever spent on Social Security, ever. Again, in human history. Why don't people feel their retirement is secure? Part of it is because Social Security is a defined benefits plan. It's not a defined contribution plan, it's a defined benefits plan. And because we didn't take that money and do what George W. Bush suggested back in 2005, which was take that money, put that money in, say, an index fund and leave it there. Imagine, by the way, how much money would be in the Social Security index fund if we actually had done what George W. Bush suggested back in 2005, when we were told by everyone that it was going to be the end of the world if we actually, quote unquote, privatized Social Security. Okay, let me just remind you, the Dow Jones Industrial Average in 2005, in January of 2005, I'm looking at the table right now, was 10,603. That was the DJIA, the Dow Jones Industrial, in January 2025, when George W. Bush was proposing that. And everyone went nuts. You're going to endanger Social Security. You're going to destroy Social Security. And Bush's only point was, it's a pyramid scheme. If we just take your money and we put it in an index fund and leave it there until you retire, it will be worth a lot more money. Well, as it turns out, again, 10,603 as of January 7th, 2005. Today, the Dow Jones Industrial Average is 41,000. Do you know how many trillions of dollars would have poured into Social Security if we had done that? But no, we decided that government should run the program. It should run the program and raid the Social Security fund for whatever they decide they need on any given day. That is democratic policymaking. You cannot bring the private markets into bear on any of this. And the result is people are deeply unhappy. There is a shock. Democrats have said everyone needs to go to college and we need to pour money into student loans. And the cost of college has shot up. And the worth of a degree has dropped precipitously. Why? Because these are all Democrat policies. Well, the reality is that pretty much all Democratic plans rely on more tax revenue, meaning stealing more money from you. But you might already be struggling with back taxes or unfiled returns. Handling this alone would be a huge mistake. It can cost you thousands of dollars. In these challenging times, your best offense is Tax Network USA. With over 14 years of experience, the experts at Tax Network USA have saved their clients millions in back taxes. Regardless of the size of your tax issue, their expertise will work to your advantage. Tax Network USA offers 3 key services: protection, compliance, settlement. Upon signing up, Tax Network USA will immediately contact the IRS to secure a protection order, ensuring that aggressive collection activities like garnishments, levies, or property seizures are halted. If you haven't filed in a while, if you need amended returns, or if you're missing records, Tax Network USA's expert tax preparers will update all your filings to eliminate the risk of IRS enforcement. Then they'll create a settlement strategy to reduce or eliminate your tax debt. The IRS is the largest collection agency in the world. Now that tax season is over, collection season has begun. Tax Network USA can even help with state tax issues. For a complimentary consultation, call today 1-800-958-1000 or visit their website at tnusa.com/Shapiro. That's 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Shapiro today. Do not let the IRS take advantage of you. Get the help you need with Tax Network USA. Here is the point. Democrat policies fail, but Kamala Harris has not been forced to answer for any of them. In fact, she runs screaming from her own proposals. Here, for example, yesterday was Harris spokesman Michael Tyler, who was asked questions about her reversal on fracking. So back in 2019, 2020, she said she wanted to ban fracking. One of the dumbest policy positions in American history. Fracking has single-handedly revolutionized global energy markets, brought in extraordinary amounts of power back to America, particularly in foreign policy terms, and also just in generalized economic terms. Democrats want to shut it down because they actually don't like American power. And also, they have this peculiar notion that fracking is somehow significantly worse for the economy than what? Importing oil from Saudi Arabia or something? In any case, her prior position was banning fracking. Turns out that's kind of unpopular in states like Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania, of course, has Marcellus Shale. It's one of the big industries over there. So here is the Harris-Walz spokesperson, Michael Tyler, running from questions about this.
The vice president has changed her position on fracking in Pennsylvania. Do you know why she's changed her position?
Listen, I mean, she's been very clear here. She's proud of the work that she's done as a part of this administration, making sure that American energy production is at an all-time high. We want to continue that progress into her first term in office here. And again, I think whether it's energy policy, economic policy writ large, that you have a fighter in Kamala Harris who is actually keeping the interests of the American people front and center.
Okay, you may have noticed that was not even remotely an answer to the question. That's called a filibuster right there. Meanwhile, her economic proposals continue to be trash. Remember, Democratic tax policy is not about bringing down the deficit. The deficit will not be brought down by increased taxes. Not at the level Democrats are talking about. You can take all the money from the rich, all of it. It will not last for a year in terms of what Democrats are spending. If you actually want to radically revise American tax policy so as to pay for all the programs that they are proposing, you have to increase the income tax to 60 to 70% for everyone making more than about 30 grand. How do I know that? Because that's precisely what happens in those glorious European countries that are so worshipped by people like Bernie Sanders. The highest tax rates kick in at what would at best be described as a middle-class income. Usually it's a lower middle-class income. There aren't enough people making that much money that you can take all of their money and pay for everything. That's not how any of this works. The Harris-Walz administration, however, is in fact pursuing the insane proposal to tax unrealized capital gains, which again is nuts. It's nuts. In principle, it applies to people who have over $100 million in net assets or something. Okay, but again, how you measure that is variable because if I own stock in my own company and it's a privately held company, how exactly do you value that? Not particularly clear. But in principle, it's basically the same thing just for purposes of understanding. As an analogy, you bought a house at $250,000. You held on to it. It's now worth $1 million. You haven't sold the house. You're still living into it. You're still living in it. Under Kamala Harris's proposal, is an analogy, the $750,000 upside would then be taxed at 25% that you would owe the government without having sold the house. That's what she's saying about stock in your company, for example. Capital gains that you haven't sold. It's absolutely perverse. It's nuts. It's unconstitutional as well. Here's CNBC's Joe Kernan laughing at the Kamala Harris spokesman Bharat Rama on the capital gains tax proposal.
And all the revenue that comes in from these unrealized gains taxes and the other taxes in the Harris plan are going to go to creating what she calls more opportunity. It's to make sure that every newborn born in this country gets $6,000.
Using the services.
Well, look, you're arguing that this is some sort of foreign concept that's completely unknown in the U.S. tax code.
It's probably unconstitutional. It's probably, and it was never in anyone's intent to tax.
It's not an income tax,
and it's never going to happen. Probably. Not I'm not going to say my lifetime.
I wouldn't say that.
Not in Becky's lifetime.
Kamala Harris's capital gains tax proposal here is absolutely foolish. It would undermine the health of the American economy, obviously, but it's tough to prioritize your own health, especially if you're not sure where to start. That's why I'm excited to introduce Lumen. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. All you have to do is you breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you now know what's going on with your metabolism, which means you know whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Forget those one-size-fits-all diet fads. What sets Lumen apart is its ability to understand you on a personal level. With the crazy news cycle, all the travel I've been doing recently, and all the travel I'm about to do, Lumen is an absolute lifesaver. It takes my unique metabolic data, it crafts a personalized nutrition plan for every day tailored to my body's needs and goals. With Lumen, you're not just getting a device, you're getting a health companion. Breathe into it before and after a workout or a meal and gain real-time insight into your body's metabolic response. Lumen will provide you with actionable tips to help you stay on top of your health. If you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/Shapiro. Get 15% off your Lumen. That is lumen.me. Use code Shapiro for 15% off your purchase. Again, lumen.me. Use Shapiro. Get 15% off your Lumen today. Start making yourself healthier today with Lumen. Okay, but here's the thing. If Democrats actually gain control of the Supreme Court, they would ram this through. They would pretend that it is a tax on income, even though the income has not been realized. By the way, there are all sorts of practical problems with it, obviously. Cato Institute's tax policy director said, quote, one of the practical challenges is appropriately accounting for losses when the value of an asset declines. So what exactly happens if I own my company and today it's worth $1 billion, but then we make a bunch of mistakes and now my stock is worth $500 million? Do I get a rebate from the government? So in 2022, when Elon Musk's net worth declined by $182 billion, the government would have owed him a $45 billion check. All of it's unworkable and stupid. But again, it's not about that. It's about punishing people who earn. That's what this is. It has always been about that. Because again, Democrats don't actually believe that you have to pay your debts. They believe in modern monetary theory. They believe that you can just blow out the spending. You can do the Nicole Hannah-Jones thing of magically creating $6 trillion and just helicoptering it around with no impact on pricing, with no impact on supply and demand. It's really impressive how stupid these policies are, which is why Kamala Harris requires her corgi there to help her through her explanation of these policies. They also require the help, again, of the tail end of that Democrat media human centipede. So Kamala Harris is proposing $5 trillion in tax increases. $5 trillion, including a 28% federal corporate tax rate and a 44.6% top capital gains and dividend tax rate, which would give America the highest total tax rate on corporate income in the developed world. The whole developed world. That includes Britain, that includes Sweden, all of them, because you have to include in that high state taxes, for example. All that gets passed down to the workers. So how exactly do you sell this to the American people? Well, you lie. You lie. So, for example, Axios has a piece today titled, Trump plans would add $5.8 trillion to national debt. Now you're thinking to yourself, wait a second. Trump is not really proposing expanding spending in the same way that Kamala Harris is proposing expanding spending, for example. Yeah, he wants to spend a lot of money, but she's going to spend more money. So how is it possible that he's going to raise the national debt more? The way they get to this number, is by suggesting that it is a government expenditure when you're allowed to keep your own money. That is the cheap trick that is played here. So if I earn $100 and right now, 35 of those dollars immediately go to the federal government and Donald Trump comes in and he says, I'm lowering your tax rate. Now you're paying $30 to the federal government. These morons treat that as though Donald Trump has increased the national debt by $5. First of all, that assumes non-dynamic scoring in the economy. A dynamic scoring means that with the extra $5, I invest it. My $100 becomes $110 because I'm a good investor. And then that 30% tax rate actually encompasses more money, for example. Right? That would be the basic idea. Or I earn $120 and because I had my tax rate reduced from 35 to 30, there's higher net revenue. Right? This is basically the Laffer curve. The idea is that a growing pie, a smaller share of a growing pie is larger than a larger share of a shrinking pie. That is the basic logic here when it comes to tax. So they're assuming non-dynamic scoring. By their logic, if you tax everybody 100%, that would be the best policy because you'd solve all of your revenue problems immediately. Of course, that's really stupid because then nobody would bother working. There would be no businesses and all the rest. That's number one. Number two, the basic notion that it ought to be included in the debt calculation when I get to keep my own money is ridiculous. The problem is a spending problem. It has always been a spending problem. The amount of money that the federal government takes in now is higher than any time in recorded history, and the debt keeps going up. Is that a tax rate problem, or is that a massive problem with stagnating growth and high expenditures? Kamala Harris can't explain any of this because she's not been asked to, and also because it makes no sense. So she's just going to keep on flip-flopping. And according to Democrats, by the way, that's totally fine. Here, for example, is Democratic Savannah G.A. Mayor, is Georgia Mayor, Van Johnson, asked about her flip-flops. And he's like, listen, flip-flopping is part of the natural course of life. It's like breathing.
What do you make of flip-flopping in this new political climate that we're in? Does it matter, or is there a way for candidates to try and say, look, they've evolved?
Well, it is evolving. I've been in elected politics 21 years. This is my 5th year as mayor. And the way I thought 21 years ago is not the way that I think now. When you know better, you do better. You have different experiences. You receive new information. Technologies change. You hear from people. And so I think, that is a natural part of the ebb and flow as it relates to that.
It's natural ebb and flow, you see. It's an ebb and flow. It's an evolution. Or she's lying. By the way, half the policies Democrats are proposing aren't even constitutional. Yesterday, the Supreme Court blocked Joe Biden's new student loan repayment plan. So every 2 minutes, he brings out a new plan to end around the Supreme Court saying you're not allowed to simply hand people money to get rid of their student loans. And he comes up with a new plan and the Supreme Court's like, nope. Then he tries it again. They're like, nope. No, really, just genius level stuff happening with this administration. Don't worry, Kamala Harris is responsible for none of it. In just 1 second, we'll get to the big Democratic media lie of the day. And that is that Donald Trump did something very, very evil and terrible by going and visiting Arlington National Cemetery in order to pay homage to 13 Americans who were murdered by the Taliban and their friends for a very limited time. Get 35% off new Daily Wire Plus annual memberships with the code FIGHT when you go to dailywire.com/subscribe. Now, as we point out here, we are bringing you like constant updates throughout this election cycle. You simply cannot afford to be without that information, which is why we need your help. Every single day at the Daily Wire, we are fighting the left and building the future. We've taken on some massive battles like that time that we stopped the Biden administration's COVID vax mandate by suing them, or that time that we destroyed GARM, the Global Alliance for Responsible Media, which was essentially a censorship regime. I went to Congress and testified, and a few days later they were done. Now we're shaking up Hollywood with our first nationwide theatrical release, Am I Racist? Matt Walsh's DEI-busting comedy that's hitting theaters September 13th. I should add, theaters are selling out across the country. Here's the truth. We can only do this stuff because of you, because of our members. When we fight, we win. But we need you in the battle to join the fight with us. Join Daily Wire Plus today. Stand with us in the fight. Get 35% off your new annual membership with code FIGHT. We need your help. We really appreciate it. Alrighty. Meanwhile, Democrats are trying to come up with some angle on why Donald Trump is very bad and very mean. So Donald Trump did something deeply damaging to the Harris-Walz campaign the other day. He pointed out that Kamala Harris was the last person in the room in the horrifying decision-making on Afghanistan, and that her decision-making got 13 Americans murdered at Abbey Gate in Afghanistan. Absolutely true. That's precisely what happened. He went to Arlington National Cemetery. When he went to Arlington National Cemetery, he did so not only with the go-ahead, but with the desire of Gold Star families. So he showed up, he placed a wreath. The Gold Star families wanted him to do so, and there were pictures that were taken and then put out. This apparently is some sort of deep and abiding scandal. We are now being told by the media it is absolutely inappropriate for the former president of the United States to visit Arlington National Cemetery to pay homage to fallen American soldiers if there are cameras there. Now again, throughout my political life, presidents have done this sort of thing. Barack Obama used to go and meet the caskets coming off planes to demonstrate how much he cared about the families. Joe Biden has gone to multiple cemeteries while president of the United States, and he has done so with political purposes in mind. Again, most recently, he did that, as you'll recall, when he actually visited the Ein Marne American Cemetery in June and insulted Donald Trump in the process. But apparently it's really bad when Donald Trump does that with the explicit permission of the Gold Star families involved. Here was CNN reporting on this. I mean, it's just, it boggles the mind. So the problem is not that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have not called one of these families. That's not a problem. We are told, by the way, again, Gold Star families have vented their frustrations. There's yet to be any accountability on this. During a press call hosted by the Trump campaign and the RNC, Cheryl Jules, aunt of Marine Corps Sergeant Nicole G., said history will repeat itself if the government cannot admit its failures. She said there's never even been condolences. They want to pretend it didn't happen. They want to take credit for ending the war, but don't want to take responsibility for how it went down. Mark Schmitz, father of Marine Corps Lance Corporal Jared Schmitz, emphasized one of the main goals is ensuring this never happens again. He said, we have to make sure that any Gold Star family is not left for 3 years just waiting for their child's name to be read by the leader of the country. So the big scandal here, of course, is that 13 American soldiers died in the worst foreign policy blunder of my lifetime, in which people were falling off wheel wells and American soldiers were getting blown up. An entire country that we spent 20 years investing in was handed over to the worst people on earth, along with hundreds of millions of dollars of American weaponry and machinery. And then none of the names of the dead are read by the administration. None of the families are reached out to by the administration. But the real problem is that Donald Trump paid attention to them and photos were taken. Listen to CNN's reporting here.
All right, this morning, new details on an altercation involving Donald Trump's team at Arlington National Cemetery. The incident happened while the former president was visiting Section 60, the burial site for recent U.S. casualties, during his visit on Monday. Trump's now suggesting on Truth Social that the problem stemmed from his campaign's use of photography. CNN's Elena Treen has more from Washington, D.C. There was some back and forth here about what happened from the park and the Trump campaign. What are you learning this morning?
Well, there's still a lot of details that are unclear here, Sarah, and we are still trying to learn more, get more information. But what is clear, and both sides agree on, is that there was some sort of incident. And you can see that where you saw that video of Donald Trump laying flowers at the burial site for some of these recent fallen soldiers, that's known as Section 60. That is really where some of this incident, we're told, has taken place.
So it's all about whether Donald Trump adhered to the rules on photography. It's not about the 13 dead American soldiers who were entirely ignored. Joe Biden's at the beach. Again, he's at the beach. He's still the president. I know we're supposed to pretend he's not the president anymore. He's still the president. He's at the beach. He said in open debate, troops did not die on his watch. He is a liar. It is his fault. And he's at the beach. Kamala Harris put out a statement about how we honor all the dead. Yeah, really, do you? Because I noticed that you didn't call any of their families. That's one of the things I noticed. But the real problem is that Donald Trump went there and people took pictures. That is just terrible. And so we have Maggie Haberman, who puts out a piece all about the images at the grave and how it dismays the family of a Green Beret buried at Arlington. Okay, well, I noticed that a bunch of the other families are not dismayed. Quote, we would like to express our heartfelt thanks and appreciation to President Donald Trump for his presence at the recent Section 60 gathering, honoring our children and their fallen brothers and sisters. On the 3-year anniversary of the Abbey Gate bombing, the president and his team conducted themselves with nothing but the utmost respect and dignity for all of our service members, including our beloved children. The statement was made on behalf of the families of Sergeant Taylor Hoover, Sergeant Nicole G., Purple Heart recipients, retired USMC Sergeant Taylor Vargas Andrews, and retired U.S. Marine Corps Corporal Kelsey Lanehart. The families added, quote, we had given our approval for President Trump's official videographer and photographer to attend the event, ensuring the sacred moments of remembrance were respectfully captured and so we can cherish these memories forever. We are deeply grateful to the president for taking the time to honor our children. But according to the media, Trump is bad for doing this. The Biden-Harris administration is not bad and not responsible for what actually happened and not paying any attention to the families and ignoring them. And in fact, deliberately overlooking them. Donald Trump is bad for having visited Arlington National Cemetery and pictures were taken. Wow. J.D. Vance was pretty fired up about this yesterday. Here he was pointing out that these 13 brave Americans are dead because of Kamala Harris.
3 years ago, 13 brave, innocent Americans died, and they died because Kamala Harris refused to do her job, and there hasn't been a single investigation or a single firing. We're going to talk about a story out of those 13 brave, innocent Americans who lost their lives. It's that Kamala Harris is so asleep at the wheel that she won't even do an investigation into what happened, and she wants to yell at Donald Trump because he showed up. She can go to hell.
Okay, by the way, people are angry at him for having said this. J.D. Vance served in the military. J.D. Vance did. He didn't lie about it like Tim Walz either. And this is that sort of passion. The media are trying to play that as though it's how could he say such a terrible thing? How could he say she can go to hell? How could he say such a thing? First of all, I mean, compare that to what they've been saying about Donald Trump for the last 10 years, and it's nothing. It doesn't even chart. But this apparently is unhinged. It's unhinged to say that if she ignores the dead American soldiers that her administration created, that somehow saying go to hell is like, that's wow, it's just terrible. How? By the way, the Biden-Harris administration has treated dead American soldiers with nothing but contempt, truly contempt. They won't even mention their names. They pretend this stuff doesn't even happen. You'll recall when Joe Biden literally checked his watch. Remember, he actually checked his watch during a ceremony honoring slain heroes. He checked, like those actual people, he was checking his watch multiple times during the event. It's still, again, the single most disgusting failure of the Biden administration, and there have been a lot. Okay, all of this plays into the relaunch of the Trump campaign. Kimberly Strassel has an entire piece on this. She says the month-long media eclipse of Donald Trump was unprecedented, and he didn't like it, whether due to Trump's confusion over Kamala Harris's sudden popularity or to a deliberate strategy to wait out her headline cycles. The Republican nominee appears newly focused on shoring up electoral terrain. Trump loves big and enduring crowds. The campaign still sees the value of the rallies, but knows they can't be Trump's sole event forum on this home stretch, so he's reducing some of the rallies. He is now moving on to themes. So he decided to pay tribute, obviously, to Arlington National Cemetery. So that is one theme, is the weakness on foreign policy. He's going to be touring a Michigan steel plant today to talk about inflation and manufacturing. He's patching up feuds with people like Governor Brian Kemp in Georgia. And of course, he's drawing in people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, who both have decided that they are going to endorse Donald Trump. He is doing interviews with kind of unlikely sources. He did an interview, for example, with former Navy SEAL podcaster Sean Ryan. He's also been talking with people like Theo Vaughn and the Nelk Boys and Logan Paul, as well as a live stream with Elon Musk. And so he is attempting to change strategy. The reality is, the only thing that matters here is whether he can prosecute the case against her. Her entire campaign relies on you knowing nothing about her. Her entire campaign. And the stakes for Donald Trump on a personal level are pretty high, by the way. He still has a bunch of legal trials that are in the offing. If he loses the election, the likelihood that Donald Trump actually serves time in prison, pretty high, because the legal mechanisms have been weaponized against him. Here's CNN's Ellie Honig pointing this out.
What happens if he loses to these cases?
It's such a good reminder of the stakes for Donald Trump, the individual, because if he wins, he's president and these cases all go away or get put on indefinite long-term hold. But if he loses, he's going to have to contend with all four of these cases.
If Donald Trump loses, he's facing serious trials and he'll have a lot of time on his hands if he's not president.
Yeah, if he loses, I think it's very likely he's going to have 2 federal trials, late 2025, early 2026.
Okay, again, the stakes are really high because the Democrats have weaponized everything. They've weaponized social media. They've weaponized the media. They've weaponized the legal system, the legal infrastructure. It's a super high-stakes election. The left loves pushing their agenda on everything, literally everything, including product lines. I mean, have you looked at men's health products lately? Half of them are not selling it to actual men. I know, it's weird. Here's the thing. We don't need supplements designed by soy boys who think masculinity is toxic. We need products made for real men. By real men. And this is where Responsible Man comes in. Responsible Man created the Emerson multivitamin, not for the wimps, not for the woke bros, but for men of honor who take duty seriously. Right now, you can get your first order of Emerson multivitamins for 30% off with my special discount. Visit responsibleman.com. Use my code Shapiro to secure this offer. Let's be clear. This isn't just about saving money. It's about investing in your own health, which is an actual smart thing to do. The Emerson multivitamin is packed with 33 key ingredients that support your immune system, sharpen your brain, keep your heart and muscles strong. It's everything a conservative man needs to fight the good fight against the radical left. And here's the kicker. It's made here in America. No Chinese knockoffs, no outsourcing to the countries that don't like us very much. Just good old American quality. Visit responsibleman.com. Use my code Shapiro to get 30% off your order. Remember, a strong America needs strong, healthy men. Strong men start with Responsible Man vitamins. That's responsibleman.com. Code Shapiro. Responsibleman.com. Be the man America needs. Meanwhile, it's not just that there's a lot at stake at the presidential level. There's a lot at stake with regard to the Congress. If, God forbid, the Democrats were to achieve a triumvirate, it would fundamentally shift the way government is done in this country. Democrats would immediately kill the filibuster in the Senate. They would immediately ram through a bunch of voting laws that make it much easier to perform voter fraud and ballot harvesting across the country. They would immediately try to stack the Supreme Court. They would immediately add 2 new states in Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico, hoping that would be 4 Democratic senators to permanently stack the Senate of the United States in their own favor. That is the Democrat plan. So the Senate and congressional races, they matter an awful, awful lot. Right now, if you take a look at where we are with regard to the Senate polling, the Republicans are in the lead in West Virginia. That is a pickup for them. That would take them to 50. They need 1 more to get to 51. Okay, the 51st likely happens in Montana. It is very likely that the Republicans pick up the Sheehy tester seat in Montana. That one, again, looks like the most likely seat for them to pick up. There are several other vulnerable seats for Democrats. You have Dave McCormick, who's running against Bob Casey in Pennsylvania. That's a possibility, although the polling in Pennsylvania right now does, in fact, have Bob Casey in a fairly solid lead. In Arizona, the pick of Kari Lake as the nominee appears to have been a full-scale disaster area. Kari Lake is the Republican nominee in Arizona. I want her to win. She's losing by 15 points against Ruben Gallego. 15. Donald Trump is likely going to win Arizona, and Kari Lake is likely going to underrun him by something like 10 points. Turns out, when people lose an election, probably renominating them for the same position, it's a risky move at best, particularly if you're not Donald Trump. It's risky with Trump. It's way riskier if you're a Senate candidate. In Nevada, the polling suggests that Sam Brown is down a little bit in Nevada. The polling suggests that Eric Hovde is down a little bit in Wisconsin. And bottom line is that all of this can reverse, but everybody's going to need to actually put in the work. Because if you look at the state of these races, Ohio, Sherrod Brown is a toss-up. Sherrod Brown is running against Bernie Moreno in Ohio. But right now, the polling in the Ohio Senate race has Sherrod Brown up anywhere from 4 to 6 points. It could be off. Again, all these polls could be off. Again, these are numbers that need to change, and they need to change fast. Jackie Rosen, who's a terrible senator from Nevada, up about 10 points. Republicans need to not just focus at the top of the ticket. It is time to focus on the Senate races. Those Senate races are deeply important. If Republicans do not pick up at least 2 seats here, that is going to be a massive fail, and not only a massive fail, a dangerous fail. By the way, the same thing is true in Congress. It turns out that in Congress, losing suburban voters is a big, big problem. Republicans trading rural voters for suburban voters has meant that Democrats are doing better in seats that they used to lose. Right now, the control of the House could come down to some of those suburban seats. If you were to forecast the likely outcome in the House, currently, Republicans have 220 seats in the House of Representatives. Democrats have 211 seats in the House of Representatives. The latest polling forecast I've seen suggests that Republicans might end up with 219 seats. Okay, you think they have an unworkable majority now? Let them lose a couple of seats. That'll be even more unworkable. These races matter. Republicans would be foolish to ignore the down ballot races. They matter an awful, awful lot. And a lot of those down ballot races are happening in states that are not competitive, like California or New York. So if you are a conservative or an independent, and you don't wish to see Democrats completely rewrite the bargain of the country, if you're living in a purple district in California or New York, you matter an awful, awful lot. Alrighty, coming up, we're going to get into the Surgeon General of the United States declaring that parents are overwhelmed. His solutions are not particularly useful. If you're not a member, become a member. Use code Shapiro at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. Click that link in the description and join us.
Republicans are Nazis. You cannot separate yourselves from the bad white people.
Growing up, I never thought much about race. It never really seemed to matter that much, at least not to me. Am I racist?
I would really appreciate it if you left.
I'm trying to learn. I'm on this journey. If I'm going to sort this out, I need to go deeper undercover.
They gon' say I'm racist.
Joining us now is Matt, certified DEI expert.
Here's my certification. What you're doing is you're stretching out of your whiteness. This is more for you in this field. Is America inherently racist?
The word inherent is challenging there.
I want to rename the George Washington Monument to the George Floyd Monument.
America is racist to its bones.
So inherently.
Yeah, this country is a piece of
white
folks,
white
trash, white supremacy, white woman, white boy.
Is there a black person around here? There's a black person right here. Does he not exist?
They gon' say I'm racist.
Hi, Robin.
Hi, what's your name?
I'm Matt.
Just had to ask who you are because you have to be careful.
Never be too careful.
They gon' say you racist.
Buy your tickets now. In theaters September 13th. Rated PG-13.